screen for this. Awesome. Thumbs up if you can. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, but fingers crossed. Okay, so thank you all for coming. I know 7th week can be a bit hectic, so we really appreciate it, and hopefully you get something out of this. So we've had a lot of questions lately through mentors and also just to the Oeconomica board about how to get a research assistant position. We assume that most of the people here are interested in economic research and some could be other, but this can really be applied to sort of any research role on campus, even outside of the economics department. Ignore the wrong date on this, I forgot to change it. Okay, so first, to sort of walk you through what we're gonna do, we'll show you sort of the variety of research options available on campus. Each job will sort of offer a little something different to you. We'll talk about what to do before you apply, what you do once you're on the job, and sort of how to get those positions in general. So first, starting off with sort of research options out there, to give you a broad overview, and this ranges from professor to professor, but you can expect to spend about 2 to 20 hours per week for a professor. Again, this is a huge range and will really just depend on the type of work you're doing and also your role for whichever professor you're working for. Normally, these are paid either through financial services or just as a paycheck each week, but these aren't necessarily unpaid positions. So you are getting paid for your work, and that's a huge benefit of it. A lot of these can be done during the academic school year, but you will also see a lot of research positions open up during the summer. It's not uncommon for summer positions to turn into part-time jobs during the school year, but that's definitely just to keep an eye on. Those positions are open sort of throughout the year, and there isn't necessarily one season to apply for them. So first off, the one type of job that you'll see that RAs do deals with data. So this will include data entry or data mining. So for the first one, this really requires no experience. So if you're a first year who just started college, doesn't have a ton of technical skills, this is a great job to look out for. It gives you experience and allows you to get to know a professor. It is a little bit boring, be a great way to sort of introduce yourself to a professor and can be a gateway to other more important work. Not more important work, I shouldn't say, because data entry is also incredibly important, but more fun work. Data mining includes web scraping and PDF ingest. That is a little bit more technical, but again, sort of this is very data driven. This is what you'll be sort of helping a professor with in the very early stages of their research to sort of get the data set cleaned and ready. As I mentioned before, within data sort of driven roles, you'll also see data cleaning, as I mentioned before. So this is this can include merging data sets, recoding variables, deduplicating entries. We can help you with those skills in Oeconomica through our technical workshops. You can also just watch Khan Academy videos or YouTube videos. These are relatively easier skills to pick up and really just require practice. You will also have data analysis, which is a little bit more interesting. That's what you'll be doing some of sort of the preliminary regression analysis and sort of more complicated machine learning algorithms if your job requires that. So that's sort of the realm of data. That's very empirical. And again, this will range from professor to professor, where their research is and what their needs are at that time. On the other side of sort of empirical work, you have theory work. And so at the very entry level, you'll see jobs that require you to type math and LaTeX, create figures and ticks, or do literature reviews. So If you're typing things in LaTeX, again, these are relatively easy skills to pick up. Literature reviews, if you're in a cohort or just in your free time or reading economic research papers, that's a great way to familiarize yourself with the material. Higher level theoretical work will require computationally solving models, analytically solving models, and writing new models. So this would be something you see a senior RA do for a professor that is primarily doing theoretical work. And again, sort of that's a role that you'll either have as an upperclassman or grow into from an entry-level role. Any questions so far? Okay. So theoretical and empirical work are sort of the two roles that you'll have with a professor, but that isn't necessarily where research ends at the University of Chicago. In pretty much all the majors, I believe, you have the option to write a BA thesis, and in some majors it's required. So this is a great way to get involved with individual research. Generally, this is completed in your 4th year of study, and if you're planning on writing a thesis, it's always great to just sort of jot down ideas as you think of them. Even if you're a 2nd year taking a class that you think is interesting and have a question that you think would provide a great opportunity for research, jot that down somewhere. It's really great to start generating ideas early. If you're a 3rd year or a 4th year, or I guess if you're a 4th year, you should be in the thesis seminar. But if you're a 3rd year coming up with an idea, calm down. Again, this is sort of a very relaxing time for you to just sort of generate ideas, think about the things you're interested in, and prepare for that. So you have your BA thesis available to you through Oeconomica. We also have the cohort system to allow you to get involved in research. This is primarily targeted at 1st and 2nd years, although it is really open to anyone, and is meant to really sort of help guide you, work in a collaborative environment, and help prepare you for a BA thesis later down the line. The big difference between sort of being an RA versus doing independent research is just the creativity that you have access to. When you're doing your own research, you really are sort of your own boss. You can focus on the things you want to, whereas when you work for a professor, you'll have specific tasks that you'll be completing based on what their needs are. Any questions there? Okay. Sorry, I'm scrolling too. My computer's been burning out, so I was just like, I'll just pull it up as a PDF and scroll through. Okay, so things to know before you apply. As we mentioned before, the skill level you need for each of the jobs or each of those roles is very different. So overall, the general skills that we think are important, and this will probably be echoed in the panel too. So in terms of coding languages, that includes R, Stata, Python, and MATLAB. Each professor will sort of have their own preference, and normally the requirements for each of these will be listed in the job description. So you'll know what you're getting yourself into prior to applying and interviewing. How to learn, you can either take computer science classes, SSI, if you have yet to take SOC, is a great way to learn R. We also have technical workshops where we cover basic econometrics and R functions. And you also just learn sort of R and Stata in stat classes and econometrics. So these are relatively easier to pick up in classes that you may be completing for your major. If you want to go out of your way and take computer science classes to get a better understanding of them on a computational level, that's also great. You can also do very easy sort of online classes that are a little bit more relaxed if you're interested in picking up these skills as maybe a 1st year. For the theory skills that you need, this is really where you should dig into more of the advanced math courses, including analysis and some of the upper level statistics courses. I would also definitely recommend you take Econ 200s at the honors level. This will give you a really strong theoretical foundation for economic research. Coding in MATLAB and Mathematica is also incredibly important. So picking up those skills either through doing independent sort of coding projects. There isn't a CS class here that teaches MATLAB. That's really just something that, at least for me, I've picked up through econ electives, just sort of my own independent work. But that's something to keep in mind if you're looking for a project outside of school. Also, definitely keep up to date on theoretical papers. So in your free time, if you want to read a paper, that's another way to understand what's happening in the theoretical realm of economic research. I'll pause there. Are there any questions? You can raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay. Did anyone raise their hand? Rebecca? Nope. Okay, cool. Okay. So going on to getting the job, and you'll also hear about the wins from the panelists, but this will just give you sort of a brief overview. What are the opportunities to learn about research positions? One, we definitely recommend you join some of the economics list hosts. So If you go to the Chicago Economics Research Assistant list host, you'll get specific emails about the research positions that are open. Some of them on Handshake, those tend to be for summer positions. Con Major list host with Julie Wong sometimes circulates positions that are open. Reply quickly whenever you see an email go out, and definitely be sure to sort of put your best foot forward. So clean up your resume, and if it requires a cover letter, definitely spend some time making sure that's solid. Another great way to learn about the research positions available is to just talk to upperclassmen. You'll meet some of them tonight, but if you think anyone has a really cool or interesting job, be sure to reach out to them to learn more. A lot of members of Oeconomica, including are research assistants, and that's a great way to understand what teams are hiring, what each professor requires. Also, in some occasions, these students are in charge of hiring for a professor, so it's always good to network within undergraduate circles. In terms of finding the faculty that you want to work for, you should definitely find professors whose research interests you. You can use online directories. A lot of econ majors work for professors across the econ department, as well as Booth and Harris. Younger faculty tend to do a lot of research. If they are an associate professor, they're really looking for that tenure. So they will be busting out a lot of research papers, and that's a great way to get involved in research. There are also larger research groups for people like Head and Enlist. So it really just depends on sort of the experience that you want, but don't be afraid to cold email professors and reach out to them if you find their work interesting. You should always do some research beforehand, so reading some of their working papers, looking at where they're cited, just so that if you do get called back, you're prepared to talk to them they're involved in and how you think you can contribute and fit into their team. So here's a good sample email. Again, we'll be sending the recording and we'll also be circulating the slides after this. So do not worry about writing, but this is just sort of a general template if you have absolutely no experience. So I'm a first year interested in getting involved as a research assistant in the Department of Economics. While I have no more than an introductory economics background, I would be eager to work for you doing data entry, summarizing papers, or performing any other tasks to aid in your research while building my skills. I'm particularly interested in your research job on job insecurity and game theory, as it is applied to the workplace. In my job this summer, I was found the inefficiencies created by workers choosing to allocate their time in ways that were inconsistent with the intentions of their supervisors. I realize that you are very busy, but I ask for your sincere consideration and an opportunity to speak with you about assisting you with your research. So this person has very little economic research experience. They're really just honest about what they're interested in. They provide sort of how they've seen this work applied in the real world and are interested in learning more. So it's always good, one, to thank the person at the end for taking the time to read the email and recognizing that they're incredibly busy, and just being honest with them about your skill level. Definitely never lie to a professor about the skill level that you have, because they will know and they will figure it out. But definitely just being honest, being open to a conversation with them, and definitely just putting your best foot forward and being polite. For higher experience, I won't read this one out loud, but this is another sort of template that you can use if you have some of those technical skills. Definitely highlight any technical skills that you do have and the level that you have them at. So for example, this person mentions that they know how to typeset solutions to differential equations in LaTeX, which if this professor needs that, is a great way to sort of introduce yourself to them and show them how you can be a valuable. What makes a good email? Asking for something that's concrete. You should definitely ask about the research they've done, and you can directly ask them for a job. So do not be shy about that. Definitely highlight what you bring to the table, and highlight why you want to work for them. So definitely have a specific reason for why you want to work for them over another professor. You don't necessarily have to highlight that, be like, oh, you're the only professor I've emailed, but definitely don't make it seem like a standardized email that you've sent out to 100 professors. What to expect from this? A lot of times no one will respond. So in that case, do not feel dejected. A lot of research positions are gone in a variety of ways. So cold emailing, but it is a great way to get involved with professors that you may not have a direct contact. If you email several people, it could turn into something, but you definitely should cast a wide net if you're planning on cold emailing people. In terms of interviewing, definitely always play to your strengths. Again, be honest with your skill level, and definitely highlight any skills that you do have in an Oeconomica paper, or if you've done any independent research, highlight that as well. That looks really great. And also highlight any advanced course that you've taken and how that sort of expanded your understanding of whatever area they're researching in. If you're inexperienced, definitely be prepared to highlight that you're an investment. This normally happens for first and second years who are willing to stay on a team for 2 to 3 years. So that's something where a professor can invest a lot of time and energy into you, and then sort of you can grow with that professor and become an even more valuable resource to them. You should, again, sort of this is in a similar vein, do not ask generic questions. Definitely show that you've read the paper, have thought about it, and it's always great to sort of bring into the context that sort of you've read it in or what you've observed in the real world. So in the previous email that we read, he compared it to sort of what he had seen in his job, but definitely be sure to read their research before meeting with them. They will know if you haven't read their research because they wrote their papers. Once you're on the job, just some general tips, and the panelists will get in this as well, so I don't want to spend too much time on these slides, but definitely take all tasks seriously. There's really nothing that's below you, and you should really just be committed to doing your job well. If you do literature reviews, data entry, all of the things that may be a little bit more boring really well, you can always ask for better work. And so that sort of allows you to sort of vouch for yourself, show that you're reliable, and really help you grow within your role. You should always ask questions if you don't understand something. Do not just do something incorrectly. If you're confused about anything, be sure to ask the professor, or if you're on a bigger team, sort of senior researcher. Also, feel free to reach out to those professors. They love to talk about their research, and they generally love to talk to their team. Okay, so perfect. We got that done in 20 minutes, which is what I wanted to do because I wanted to leave most of the time for the panel. So this will be circulated. Don't worry if you've missed anything. Sorry for the typos throughout it. We've sort of recycled these slides, and I did not do a good enough job reading through it beforehand for grammatical and spelling issues. But that aside, I want to take a second to recognize all of our panelists. They'll introduce themselves more in depth, but we have Rebecca Liu, Cedric Elkow, Olivia Martin, Jake Benj, and TV Kumaran. So those will be our panelists, and let's get started on that. So let me stop sharing my screen. Also, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate your time and are incredibly happy that you volunteered. Okay. Okay. So I just introduced their names, but they all have incredible experience. So for the panelists, could you guys just go around and introduce yourselves really briefly, just sort of your name, major, the team that you're working on, the size of the team, and sort of how long you've been there. Rebecca, if you want to start.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a third-year math spec econ major and hopefully also an econ major. I've been working for Professor Constantine Yanelis for, I think this is my second quarter working for him, but like I've worked for him over the summer also. I started in spring quarter, like right at the beginning of coronavirus. I basically just like emailed him and it'd be like, I'm really interested in your research on coronavirus. And like, that kind of just got me the job. Yeah.
I can go next. I'm TV. I'm a math and econ major. I think most of you have known me through Oeconomica. I have spent the last year working for James Robinson at Harris. I actually took a year to work for him full time last year. And the whole point was because I am really interested in going into research and I'm interested in this field.
Me and Olivia unmuted at the same time. Hi, I'm Jake. I'm a fourth year econ major and Spanish minor. I started working, or I guess I've been involved with research assistant positions since winter of first year. So I don't know, for like almost 3 years now. Right? Yeah, I don't know, whatever. I got involved at first with Professor John List. I took his just intro to micro with him, and he was like, if anyone wants to work for me, you can just walk on. So I did that. And then now I work for Professor Anya Samik, who's at USC actually, but she and Professor List started a project together a couple years ago. So she is in charge of it now. So I work for her.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I am a fourth year econ major, and I have been an econ RA since around this time, my second year, so about 2 years. I worked for Professor Rick Hornbeck at Booth for a year, and then in the summer, after my second year, I took a job with Professor Heckman's group, and I have been working with them ever since. So.
I'm Cedric. I'm in between my second and third years, and I'm currently taking a gap year. And I'm a math and econ major, and currently I'm working for an econ consulting firm, but it's like pretty small and run by a professor, and his research is very intertwined with the kind of consulting cases. So this is a professor at UT Austin, and it's kind of similar to being a research assistant for a Chicago professor, because the one other intern is also a U Chicago undergrad. And other than this, I've worked for professors in law school and computational social science and at Booth, including for Rick Hornbeck also.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys so much. Just to get started, can you talk a little bit about the skills that you had applying to the job? I know you came into your positions in a variety of different ways, but just to give everyone a perspective on sort of what qualifications you had when you first hit that submit button for your application, about that process.
When I first applied for a job, like I had like no experience at all, but then when I actually got the job, I knew like a decent amount of R. I was about to start econometrics, so like I was anticipating that I would know Stata by the end of the quarter. So like I definitely put that into the email. So like I mean, most of the professor's work's like done in Stata, so like I actually did a lot of work in Stata for him. Like none of my R skill like just helped any, like it just doesn't help at all because he just doesn't do stuff in R. But like I guess like putting it out there would help you get a job, because like he at least would know that like you have some experience with coding. So I think that would help. Yeah. So it's just R and Stata basically.
For myself, my first job in first year, I worked for this Booth professor called John Heisinger. He does sports and macroeconomics. And, you know, I just want to say that I think, you know, everyone has something to offer. So at that point, I didn't really know how to code and stuff. I wasn't very familiar with R. I just knew basic R, but I didn't really know any other language. But you know, I spent a lot of time on, you know, baseball forums. I'm a huge like baseball fan, and I've done some baseball analytics before. So because he was this professor, he was working on like a couple of sports econ projects in the NHL and MLB. I kind of, you know, approached him and I said, hey, like, you know, I don't have a lot of experience. I haven't taken like high level econ or stat classes, but you know, I'm really familiar with the sort of data that you're working with, and I've done some web scraping, so I might be able to, like, you know, I at least know like what the terms mean and like what kind of data people usually look at, so I would be able to pick it up. So fortunately enough, he took a chance on me, and yeah, like that was something that I could build off of. So you know, even if like you don't really know a lot of coding, which is pretty natural for like a first year or a second year, in fact. I think there's still something that you have to offer, and like you just have to like find out what it is. And you know, as you go along, I think like the next few jobs that I got, they were like a bit easier to get because I already knew what I was interested in. I already did like research projects in them, so it was easier to identify what it was I was interested in and know exactly like what I could help with. So yeah, just like identify what it is that you have to bring to the table and why you're interested in it, I guess.
Yeah, I had a really similar experience. Like I said, I started working at my first job whenever I was an intro to micro, so I did not know like anything. But yeah, no, I would agree with Divya. Like, you can definitely still offer something. Like, just I think being dependable and being interested is really enough a lot of the times. Because especially for the first year that I was working, I think I probably just did like data entry and literature review, so it's like sufficient to just like show up and be excited. So
When I got the first job was data entry. Again, you need no experience to do that. You can use a computer, like you're good to go. The second one I got, they actually, when I applied for it, I was a second year. And so I was going into taking metrics. I took it at the end of my second year. I had like Statute 34, so I knew a little bit of programming. But they told me that I was underqualified for that job when I got it. I actually was rejected from the job at first and then hired back later because I was very enthusiastic about it. Which I think something is that like, even for jobs where they're going to ask for a lot of things, I think it really doesn't hurt to apply for them either way, because sometimes if you are really just willing to show up, really willing to learn how to like do the things, like take a lot of necessary classes, if you're really excited about it, sometimes it doesn't matter that you're starting without a lot of skills. And so, yeah, definitely I have learned a lot on the job, and you don't discourage yourself from applying for jobs also that aren't just data entry or aren't just entry level things, because if you're interested in it, because you might not get it, but also like you might just be able to really learn and do a lot to make sure that you're still doing okay.
Yeah, so pretty similar to what everyone else has said. So the first job or like RA job that I had was not for an econ professor. It was for a professor at the law school that kind of does law and econ related research. And I think the most useful class that I took for that, because I ended up pretty much only wrote literature reviews, was probably Hume. So not even anything like quantitative or technical, but and I guess just kind of something related to that is that even if you think you're going to be doing research in a more quantitative field, like the writing and communication skills are still invaluable, especially before you kind of have enough coding experience to contribute as like kind of a data analyst type person. Being able to like clearly articulate and summarize like what you found in a literature review is very important. And like anyone can do it, but the professor will definitely appreciate and notice if you do it well.
Great, thank you guys. Hopefully for those of you that are listening, that helped you assuage your fears a little bit about sending that email and applying to positions, because research positions tend to be something that you grow into and develop skills throughout. Another question I think that a lot of people might have is just, what made you want to get involved in research in the first place, and how has that sort of complemented your undergraduate experience at UChicago? You can go in the same order, or if someone wants to kick off that question, feel free.
I actually have a very interesting kind of story to tell, just because like at the beginning, like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So like I applied for some like random internship, but then I just ended up just like hating my internship. Like literally, and like midway through my internship, I was just like, I do not want to stay on this job. But because like it was like a Metcalf thing, I had to stay on the job. But then like later on, I just decided that like I do not want to work. I just do not want to work on like a 9-to-5 job, and I just really want to go into research. It's more flexible, it's more fun. I get to do something different every day. I get to learn something new. And then like I think like starting from my second year, I just like really started just to like look for research opportunities, and I didn't get it at the end. I didn't get it until like the end of my second year, but like yeah, it was kind of like a shift for me like in my second year, so it was kind of stressful.
So I always knew that I wanted to go into research and academia from day one. So, getting an RA job and everything was just, the next step of the plan. So when I was first year, like I definitely wanted to gain some experience because I knew I wanted to do research, but I didn't really know what it was like to engage in economic research. And it's, you'd find out that it's not, all that glorified. Because yeah, if you're like super smart, you come up with a new theorem, then like good for you. But most of research just involves like nitty-gritty grunt work, and if you don't love that, or if that puts you off, then maybe research like as a field is not for you, right? So I just kind of wanted to experience that. And one thing that did change for me though was that when I was the first year, I kind of I didn't really have a field that I was really interested in. I was a huge baseball fan, so I thought maybe like I'd become like a Bill James Moneyball kind of guy, right? So I thought I could like figure out which team was going to win and stuff. So I ended up like doing sports econ research, and I found out that I absolutely hated it. But you know, like even though I didn't really like the field that much, like the kind of skills that you get and the work experience is transferable, right? So one thing that it did help me to do was to kind of get accustomed to what research work was really like. And that kind of really helped me figure out what kind of field I was interested in. And, you know, now I'm doing development and welfare economics, and I absolutely love it. Yeah, I knew that I wanted to be a research assistant, but my experiences kind of like helped shape the path that I eventually took.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of different. I just did it because the opportunity was right in front of me. They just offered it in class if anyone wanted to try it out, and they just figured, well, I have work study, so I may as well, and data entry is pretty easy, so I'll just do it. And then I ended up liking it and sticking around. But yeah, no, I wasn't very like thoughtful, or yeah, I just kind of randomly did it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's like very, very similar to what everyone else is saying. I was actually in psych research my first year, and because I thought I wanted to do that. I've always kind of liked research. I did research in high school as well. And then I took Lima's 200, and I started thinking about going to grad school in economics, which Lord knows if that will end up happening at this point. But I decided to just switch to doing econ and research instead. So but honestly, it's really fun. It's like whatever reason you end up doing research, you get a lot of flexibility. You get to do a lot of work that's really, really interesting, and you get to do things that are really tailored to your own interests, which is a big plus. So I recommend.
Yeah, I don't know how useful my story of getting involved in research for the first time will be, because it's kind of born out of my own like lack of planning or poor planning, because I didn't have a job kind of in May of my first year. So not because I got rejected, but because I just didn't apply to anything, and I didn't plan and didn't think ahead at all. So this was kind of like the only option I had left. So I just started cold emailing professors in May of my first year to work for them in the summer, and thankfully worked out. And the person I worked for over the summer, I ended up working for another 7 or 8 months. So yeah, I also have grown to really appreciate kind of the time flexibility and just kind of the way that it naturally extends what you learn in class, and you don't feel like you're kind of stepping into an area where you're going to need to build an entire new set of skills that is completely unrelated to anything you've ever seen before.
Great. I should also mention, if anyone has a question right now, feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. I want to make sure that we're answering your guys' questions as well. Okay. If there are no other questions, we can move on to the ones we have. Could each of you walk us through just sort of regular week, the tasks that you do, how that's changed over time, just to give everyone an idea of sort of what that looks like, what they can expect within a research role, and how you balance that with your classes and other commitments?
I think my experience has been like very atypical, just because like when I got my job in spring, like everyone was just like doing COVID research, and then because like new data is coming out, and like a lot of people just want to get like research paper out like as soon as possible, and then basically like what I did at the beginning was just calling different like government agencies and then just asking for data. I remember just like trying to call like state governments, and then the SBA, like the Small Business Association. And then it was just like, my professor was just like, he wanted data. And then it was just a bunch of phone calls at the beginning. And then that was basically just my spring quarter. And then towards the end of it, there was like some data work, but then in the middle of the summer, that's like when like all this data work kicked in. Like he knew that I had time, and then it was also kind of like in the middle of like a research project, because like at the beginning was like all the data collection and all that, and then in the beginning like you get data analysis, like for me, it was basically just like summarizing the data and then cleaning the data. And then I think like for the more like sort of technical part, like he had like grad students to do it for him. So basically like I just like basically just like drop the duplicates and then like merge data sets. And then, yeah, it was that kind of stuff. And then summarize things and then identified patterns. And then like he also got to like I also got to work with like professors from other universities just because like he had co-authors, and then his co-authors sometimes want me to do things. So like I kind of just like went from like one professor to another, and it was a busy summer. And then things kind of just like quieted down at the end of the summer and like going into this quarter. It was more like proofreading. So like he would send me like a draft, I would read over it, and then just like mark all the kind of typo and then grammatical mistakes. Because sometimes like professors, like I think some of the paper or like some parts of the paper might be written by like grad students or whatever, and they're just like not really careful with like a lot of like grammatical stuff, and then there's a bunch of typos. Like you'd be surprised how like smart people make mistakes. Like I was like really relieved that like research papers aren't perfect when they first come out. I was involved in a little bit of that, and then I was also involved in like, so like professors will like submit their papers to like certain journals to publish, and then they would get feedback from the journal or like whoever is reading or judging, the editors, and then they would have to like edit the papers, and then they would have to like write up a response to the journal, and then they would be like, oh, thank you for your advice, and this is what we changed. And then I also got to kind of just proofread that, and then that was a fun experience. But then it was just like kind of several weeks of like intense proofreading. And then going into this quarter, he asked for like more data sets. So like sometimes professors don't really know what they're doing, and like they would just give you a task that just sometimes is just impossible to finish. Like he's gonna ask for like certain data, and then you realize that it costs money, and sometimes it costs like thousands of dollars. So you finally like got to make a meeting with whoever has the data, and then you send all the information to the professor, and you'll be like, oh, in order to get this data, we need like $7,150. And then the professor's like, that's a lot of money, so no. And then I mean, it's just like a bunch of like small things that I got to do with him. And then sometimes like I would get to like meet with the rest of the team, which is just mostly grad students or like just master's students. Yeah, it's been fun. And now it's been a lot of proofreading also. I think it's like the second round of proofreading for another like COVID related paper. Yeah, like the payment protection program. I'm not really sure if any of you heard of this, but it's a fun time.
Okay, so I don't know if like typical is like I don't know if you can like have a typical work week, because you know, usually if you're hired, it's because the professor has a need. They're not just like bad to give you experience just because you need it. Like it's really because like they're working on something and it's like beneficial for both of you that they hire you in the first place, right? So typically, like I would say that if there's any sense of repetition in your work, it's like it's in phases, right? So usually when you begin a project, you're like sort of data mining, and then like after that you're doing cleaning, and then it's the analysis, and then like writing if that's part of your job. But it's, you know, so your work changes when you work for the professor. So it's not like you're doing the same thing again and again for like a year. But you know, like at the beginning when you're doing data mining or whatever, like, yeah, that's fairly repetitive because you just like look up the data online, you just download the data sets or something. And that can be a bit mind numbing at first, but you know, like that's just what it is. It's part of the research process. And then generally when you're done with that and you get to the data analysis and cleaning part, you get a bit more, I don't know, creative freedom, I suppose. But you know, like you do those in phases. So it's not like, you know, you sign on as an RA and you do the same thing the whole year. It's generally not like that. In terms of like commitments, you know, like Aziza mentioned that like you've got 2 to 20 hours typically. Most of the professors that actually all the professors that I've worked for, they don't demand like daily updates, and they don't get you to like, punch in and punch out every day. They do weekly check-ins. So you generally have like tasks that you have to accomplish by the end of the week or like by the end of the month or something, and they'll sort of check in and see how you're doing. And that's kind of good because they understand that you're students, and you don't have like 8 hours a day or whatever to spend just doing work. So if you've got a midterm or a PSET or something, you generally have the flexibility to sort of like not do any work the first half of the week and then do everything in one shot at the end, just so long as the work is done by the end of the week. So you do have a bit of flexibility, even for something as kind of repetitive or mind-numbing as like data mining. But your work changes, and it's even the kind of boring bits are kind of fun and challenging sometimes. So.
I guess about like a typical week, because I worked in 2 different labs, so I guess I can kind of talk about the difference. John List's lab is really big. He has probably 6 or so full-time researchers and then grad students that work with him. And so they have like a million RAs. And so it's just a lot of bouncing around there. So like at any time they have like several different projects going on. So I think there was a lot of variety there in terms of like what type of project I was on, as well as the type of tasks I was doing. Now with Professor Samik, I would say it's a lot more like the same group of tasks, I guess. So we're a behavioral lab, so we collect data by doing interviews. So everything from like reaching out to parents, scheduling them for interviews, doing the interviews, entering the data for the interviews, cleaning it. Yeah, that's kind of the scope of what I do.
I would say that first I did data entry for like 10 hours a week, just type in Excel for 10 hours a week, pretty straightforward. I've been working on the same project at with Heckman's group since the project kind of started. So it's looking at the effects of parental interactions and childhood or parental investments in childhood social interactions on long-term life outcomes, like graduating from high school and that kind of thing. It's really interesting. And so we're working with a panel data set, and for most of the first part I was working there, we spent a lot of time the one other RA I worked with and I spent a lot of time like getting familiar with this data set and looking at like just the characteristics of it, writing a lot of literature reviews, trying to figure out where exactly the direction of the research we were doing should go. And it was really cool because a lot of that was actually directed by us, which meant that, it was really cool to actually have like a lot of, not necessarily final say, but a lot of influence on what was happening. And then that translated into data cleaning and then later data analysis. And so at this point, I've been working with like the same subset of data for about 6 months, and I've just been doing a ton of different analysis. Like every week, we'll have a meeting on a Friday, and I'll say, these are the regressions I ran this week. These are the summary sets I have this week. This is what I learned from the data this week. And then my boss, who's a grad student, will say, here's what I would like to happen. And then we'll just start the whole process again. And so it's like once a week, we're kind of meeting, figuring out what the next questions are, and then going for it. I've only met the professor I work for once, which is also kind of common. It depends, like I know like Liz is a lot more hands-on and you'll interact with them a lot more. Heckman is absolutely not like that. And so I think that depending on the size of the group you're working with and also how important your professor is, not that Don Liz isn't important, but also how like important your professor perceives himself to be, has a lot to do with how often you end up hanging out with him. So.
Yeah, I think that's like another bonus of working for a younger professor, like Azize was talking about earlier. The professor I work for now, it's like I meet with her one-on-one a lot, and she like knows my name and stuff, which is very cool.
Heckman, not so much. It's also like, I mean, even the grad students, he's also very interesting to work with because sometimes he'll get mad and then like everyone will be very, very, very stressed for 2 weeks, and the RAs don't end up being quite as stressed as the grad students, but it does kind of spill over to us. So working there full time is an experience, but definitely you get like life-changing experience. So if he is applying, definitely, or hiring, definitely apply to the jobs.
So I guess there's actually like related to that. There's a professor I worked for in last spring during when we were all remote. I guess as everyone still is. And I only worked for him for 3 months on like one specific project, and I never met him. So I guess one meeting is greater than that. And in my current job, it's very ad hoc, I guess. So I have like either like kind of daily to weekly kind of check-ins, and it's a lot of like data cleaning and kind of like web scraping and things like that, and both coding with Python and both and like data entry sort of things. So like looking through like financial statements and like, because not all PDFs can are searchable, unfortunately, and so sometimes going through by hand is a necessary kind of task. And this is definitely the most kind of regular that I've had check-ins. Like previous professors I've worked for, especially the law professor I worked for, I think I'd sometimes have like quarterly check-ins, and she would kind of just give me stuff and say like, oh, if I need it, I'll like let you know. So just finish it when you get around to it. And so sometimes I'd finish things in like a week, sometimes in like 4 months. So it was very irregular. And yeah, I think it all really just depends on who you're working for, what the workflow is like. But I think at the time, especially since it was second year and I was taking some harder classes for the first time, it was nice when I was working for that law professor to not feel like I needed to have something to show for my work every week, because oftentimes I had nothing to show for it.
Great. I'll leave it open if the audience has any questions right now. I don't want to cut too much into like the informal Q&A. So for the audience, if you have any specific questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the panelists.
Oh, before we ask questions, I wanted to say my lab is also hiring if anyone is interested in applying. I can go grab the link and put it in the chat for everyone. Spanish preferred, 15 plus hours a week preferred, doing parent interviews, entering data.
Thank you, Jake. That would be great. Also, is anyone else's lab currently hiring? I forgot to ask that. No. Okay, cool.
We are not, but also everyone who works there is a fourth year and we will be graduating. So keep an eye out in like April, because they'll be posting for summer jobs, which is
awesome. Okay, so there is a question in the chat from Jimin. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. I'm so sorry. So how much of an understanding do professors expect when you email them? What if you have a hard time grasping the theory or methodology of these papers? And then in addition to that, how do you typically end or discuss when the job will end? I wonder when I have to reach out about it or not.
So I can answer this. So first of, how much of an understanding do professors expect? It varies, right? You know, if they're looking for, if they're at the beginning of the project and they want people to sort of do data mining and stuff, not a lot. And they usually, you know, they'll usually specify what kind of skills they need. So if they're in the analysis stage, then usually like some of the postings will say, you know, send a sample of your R code or Stata code or whatever language they're using, to sort of like make sure that like you know what you're doing. But sometimes if they don't specify, they'll say, you know, we're accepting all undergrads, you know, if they're just doing a data mining job. So you can clarify if it's like an open posting and they kind of didn't specify it, but usually they do, and they'll tell you what kind of skills you need. You typically end the job, I mean, usually it's specified at the beginning, like they'll say, we need an undergrad for like, you know, this many weeks to do this job. Or if it's more of a long time thing and they're kind of like grooming you, then, you know, you can work as long as you want, I suppose, because like the goal is to train you and get you to be a bit more productive for other research projects. But if you want to leave for some reason, you should definitely discuss that. I had a bit of a problem with that in my first year, because I was kind of on the fence in the summer about whether I wanted to continue working my second year or not. And so that was like a conversation that we had to have. You know, obviously don't leave halfway, because that's kind of rude and they have like jobs that they need to finish. But like, you know, at some sort of good stopping point, like if you just finished data mining or you just finished like a set of analysis, you know, it's good to like give them a heads up and say that like you don't think you want to continue working anymore. So yeah. As far as the postings is concerned, like the list host is great. Sign up for it if you haven't, the Econ Jobs list host. But also, you know, Aziz's workshop just now about writing emails, that kind of helps. Just like if there's a field that you're interested in and, you know, they don't really have like ad postings, then just sort of reach out and say that, see if they need help with anything. I don't know, on that note, I've got kind of a funny story actually. I think Azizi has heard this before, but it's when I was in my first year, I was really enthusiastic about getting a job. And so I decided to cold email literally anyone whose email address I could get my hands on. So I kind of emailed half the IMF over one weekend. And obviously they kind of didn't appreciate that because they were like hiring like postdocs and stuff. And so there were some professors that I was kind of like leading on, and they'd like sort of email back and be like, oh, what field are you interested in? What kind of research have you done? And I'd be like, oh, I've done this and this, I've read this. And I was like super pretentious, right? And then when they find out that I'm just an undergrad, they'd be like, they just become super sassy and be like, we don't have any postings for you now, Tivia, with a full stop. And like, it was kind of funny. So if anyone in the IMF is watching this recording, I'm still here. But yeah, so usually the list host is a good spot is a good place to look for jobs. But like also, if you're really interested in a field, just look up the professors and reach out to them. Yeah.
Also take classes. Like Jake said, sometimes they will say that they're looking for people. This has never happened to me, but I know people who have just talked to professors that they like their classes and like they've hired them. I know someone who got a full-time job doing a research position like post-grad just from taking the class. And so that's also really good, especially, I mean, you guys are probably, if your first years, you're gonna have like 2 years before you're really starting to take econ electives, but even actually probably not just university ones, but like eventually you'll be able to get it just through like making a connection with someone that you're taking the class with.
I'm not on the panel, but I got 2 of my positions by just taking a class with the person. I should say I worked for professors in the econ department, Harris and Booth. And for Harris, the woman just emailed me after the class was over and was like, you seemed very involved. You should join the team. But yeah, definitely just like take classes you're interested in, go to office hours, talk to them about your research. I was not planning on getting a research position at that time, but she convinced me. So it's always like great to reach out to professors and get to know them. There are a ton of amazing faculty at UChicago. So definitely tap into that resource. Cool. Are there any other questions, or did anyone else want to like speak to those?
I guess as far as the kind of whole idea of how much background or like theory or methodology and grasping that in the papers, at least for me, I'm kind of a fan of the, like, don't really say you're not able to do something and then figure out as you're going along how to do it. And that's like part of what's really valuable about research. Not to like dive into something because you're reckless about what the outcome will be and the direction of the professor's research, but because like while you might be getting paid, like you should also think of yourself as being paid in the experience you're getting and what you're learning. And if you never feel like, I guess obviously if you're doing data entry, you might not be learning a ton, but your fast twitch muscles might be getting stronger. But if you feel like you're never like stretching yourself when you're doing research, then maybe you should find like a different area of research or ask for more work or something like that. And feeling like you're approaching a topic that you're unfamiliar with, or that it might take a little bit more background reading to be able to really understand, is not like something to necessarily be afraid of.
Yeah, and going off of that, like when emailing professors, like I feel like sometimes it's best to kind of just avoid asking questions because it's really easy to ask dumb questions. Like I've definitely done that in my first year. Like when you read a research paper and like you just don't understand it because you just like haven't learned any of the econ concepts, and then just feel like I should probably ask a question to get the professor interested. But then now that I look back at those emails, and then I realize that those questions are just really stupid. So like just say that you're like interested in what they're doing, but like don't like ask questions if you're not like 100% sure like what the paper is actually doing. But then you can definitely show interest in like the field. Say like you're just really interested in the field of education, like you read like articles about it. Say like, or if you're just really interested in like the pandemic and like you've read like a lot of news articles about it, because like I feel like econ research, it just starts from like some kind of societal issue, and like this, like the question that they're trying to ask is like not super technical, but like the way in which they're trying to solve it gets really technical. So like as long as you show your interest in kind of like the question that you're trying to solve, I think you're good. And like don't worry too much about like getting into all the technical details, because sometimes some professors' works are just like really technical. Like sometimes you won't even get to learn about it in undergrad. And it's not typically taught in many classes. It really depends on like who you work with. Like I was specifically kind of just like referring to like Kaplan's work. Like I tried reading his paper on COVID, and he was trying to model like 12 markets, and I did not understand one bit of it. So yeah, don't worry too much about it, and you'll be fine. Just don't ask dumb questions.
Also, as a note, like, just be genuine, right? Like, I don't know like why that's, like, I know like getting a job and everything is important and you want to put it on your CV and whatever, but like really just, I don't know, do some soul searching. I don't know what it is, because if you kind of have to fake it and you have to like force yourself to ask these questions that you don't understand to get a job, then maybe don't apply for that job, right? Like that kind of makes sense, no? So try to find something that you're really interested in. And if you really are interested, it's really not difficult to come up with, you don't have to fake the interest. Like you would ask genuine questions and like find a professor that you want to work for. So don't stress too much. Don't go out of your way to be someone you're not. Don't fake experience. Just be as genuine as you can, right? And like just regard it as an opportunity to gain some experience. That's what it is. You don't have to like bend over backwards for it.
Yeah. One thing about being afraid to ask stupid questions. So one strategy I like to use when oftentimes professor will like explain the current project they're working on and then explain like what you can maybe do to help. And then usually they'll say like, oh, does that make sense? And usually it won't fully make sense. And if you, rather than kind of asking, like if you're worried about asking a stupid question, if you just say like, well, or and then nothing, they'll usually jump in and then like explain it in a way that's kind of more broken down, or they'll like literally say like, oh, okay, I'll explain to you, like you don't have any background, because like and they'll understand if you don't have any background. And so really like if you are afraid of asking a stupid question, I don't think the professors will think any questions you have to ask are stupid, because they understand, like they were undergrads at one point, like they weren't experts their entire lives. And then another thing, so there's like another question about like how like working as an RA on a gap year. And so I'm not technically an RA, but I am taking a gap year and working and doing like RA adjacent sort of things. And so I just applied for this job. I think it was on Handshake or something. And usually academic year type positions are like implicitly part-time. So I just made sure I said like in my cover letter, like I will be taking, like I'm planning on taking a gap year and hoping to work full-time. And then I guess in my specific case, they were able to accommodate that. And I don't know if TV has anything to add about working as an actual RA on a gap year.
Well, I think it's not a case where it's not like a summer internship where like you kind of just find this RA position and then you want to work for, the rest of the year. It's usually a professor that you know, or like you've already been doing this work, and it's obviously like a very personal choice. And loads of people in fact, almost everyone, right, works part-time. So that's definitely not a bad thing. But for any reason, if you want to, work full-time, that's always an option if you've already got a job, right? Because so I was sort of, I wasn't working for Robinson before, but like he was sort of advising me on this project that I was doing. And I kind of felt that I wanted to take a leave because I was just done with school at that point. And I was also like super interested in research. So I kind of just asked him if I could, work for him full time. And yeah, like it helps if you already have some experience. It's not something that you just apply for with the intention of taking a gap year, if that makes sense. So I've got a question. How did you describe specific skills to make them stand out? That's an interesting question. Well, you obviously want to sell yourself as well as you can. I think that the relevance of your skills is what makes you stand out, right? Because like, if I were to be like super blunt, people aren't hiring you because you're amazing human beings. It's because, you could be amazing human beings, good for you, but like, it's really because there's some sort of mutual benefit, right? You want to be able to help them with their research. At the same time, you want their research to give you the experience at the same time. So really try to stress how well you know the field and how relevant you can be, right? So like the baseball thing that I mentioned earlier. I'm definitely not the best baseball statistician, but because like the professor works on sports economics, and I had like a really good knowledge of like what the terms mean and what kind of like typical research like looks like, it was easy for me to say that even though like I had very minimal skills, like I could like get on the project really quickly. Or like with the development econ research that I'm doing right now, because I've already done like a lot of work in development econ, and I've like done independent projects, like I was very familiar with the kind of work that was going on. So that experience would be very useful to the professor, and like that experience at the same time would also help me, because like my goal is to become better at that specific field. So my biggest advice is, like definitely people are going to have like the same skills as you at some point. Like someone else is going to know, or someone else is going to have taken the same classes. But I think that you have to make sure that like your interests and your skills really align with the project that you're applying for, and that's what makes it a good fit.
Yeah. I think like for me, it was more like you mentioned that like the basic kind of like programming languages that the professors would like use in their project, and then you mentioned sort of like things that are like specifically relevant to the project. Like, I remember like the time when I actually got the research position was like at the point I was just like super into just reading about the pandemic, and just like I was following the news every single day. And then I think the professor had like a phone interview with me after he responded to my email, and then he was like asking me to look up stuff, and then I just literally knew what he was asking for like off of the top of my head, because I was just like reading through like all of these COVID related policies, and then I knew like the exact amount of sort of like some of the aid that certain like the range, I think it was like the range for like the payment protection program or something. And then I just had like the number off the top of my head. And then he was just like, oh, could you do something for me like right now? Like, I feel like you really need to have like sort of just like have the interest and like have the knowledge that are like specific for the project. Yeah. Like other than those kind of technical stuff like R's data, like obviously you need to know it, but like in order to get you the job, you really need to actually understand what the professor is trying to do.
I guess a lot of us have been talking about or mentioned the first jobs we got, and none of us really had experience before our first job. So I guess at least in the initial cold emails I sent before, like in the first RA positions I like applied for, I think I was pretty upfront about how I had like no skills, and how like emphasizing your enthusiasm and kind of the ways in which you're willing to contribute and how you're excited about the professor's work is like a good substitute if you feel that you might not have some of the skills you might develop later on.
Oh, there's one thing I want to add is just like, I used to kind of just like attach my CV to the email. but like don't do that because nobody's actually going to read it. And like don't write a cover letter, it's not worth it. Like nobody's going to actually like clicked on like the attached file from some like random undergrad's email. Like they're not going to have time for that. Just like keep your emails like just short, super short. Just say like I'm interested in a research topic, and then like here's what I know, and then just end the email. Like include all the important information and then end the email as soon as possible once you're done with all the important stuff. I found that really helpful when I was applying for jobs.
Awesome. Did anyone, Olivia or Jake, did you want to add anything else for? Does that cover it? Okay, awesome. With
Also,
that, go ahead, TV.
I just want to add one final note. You know, like the job search process is definitely like it's difficult, right? So, you know, these are just tips to kind of help you in that process. But like, if you don't expect to send like the first email that you send, you get a job. It doesn't work like that. Like, you know, like I've gotten several jobs, but I guarantee you, I've been rejected like so many more times than you have. Like, it's painful at some point, right? You could like send 10, 20 emails and get rejected by all of them. I got rejected by half the IMF, so I know what I'm talking about. But like, don't let that discourage you. Like, as long as you have a genuine interest in research and you really just want to get that experience, just keep at it. And yeah, like don't take it personally, right? Like if you send an email and like, you know, they just don't have a need for RAs at that point, don't kind of say it's because I suck and like this econ thing's never going to work out. Like it's not like that. So, you know, like when you look for jobs on the list host and you apply, or like you just cold emailing, just kind of keep that in mind. It's really not that personal. And yeah, just keep at it. As long as you have an interest in research work, I guarantee you'll have a good time again. Oh, there's a question. Oh, when is it a good idea to keep? Well, like kind of ask them, right? So if they just, you know, if you apply for a job and they reject you, don't say goodbye. I don't want to have to ever speak to you again. It's not like that. You know, usually they'll provide a reason, or like, you know, they'll say you're underqualified or they're not hiring. And like, at that point, you can ask them, if you don't have an opportunity, could you like refer me to someone who does? Or like, you know, just check in with them like a few months later and see if like, you know, do you have an opportunity now? Stuff like that. Sometimes professors actually may not reply on time. Like, the first time I ever emailed Robinson, right? Like this is because I wanted him to advise me. He was in the Gambia somewhere. And like, I kind of like a week later, I just, you know, had a feeling. So I emailed him again and I was like, did he like have a chance to look at that? And he was like, well, I was in some like African countries. So I didn't like, you know, get to see your email. So stuff like that happens. So don't like pester them. Don't like send an email every day. It's kind of weird, but like, just sort of, just check in a few times, see if they've like read the email. If they don't have a position, ask them if they could refer you. You know, don't just, yeah, but like don't keep pestering them every day as well. So that's like a kind of read the situation a bit.
Awesome. Figure this up now, but that was really helpful. I hope everyone who was listening in got something out of it. And also a huge shout out to all the panelists. Thank you so much for taking time on a Thursday in 7th week to answer kids' questions. So we really appreciate it. And thank you again. Awesome. You guys can all go. If you have any additional questions, I'll talk to the panelists to see if we can circulate their email so you can ask them questions more directly. I'll also send you information in an email about Jake's team hiring. So if you're interested in those positions, be on the lookout for the follow-up email. Other than that, have a great night. Good luck with midterms if you still have any left. Yeah, good luck with everything. Stay safe and healthy, especially with the COVID cases rising in Chicago.
Sorry, TV. I missed the last part of that. Could you sorry, the part about the like keep pursuing it after being rejected? I like cut out.
Oh yeah, so usually they'll like provide a reason, right? So there's like a few cases. If they just don't respond, it might just be that they haven't read the email. So just check in with them again and see if they've read the email, right? And if they still don't, then you know it probably means that like they don't have any positions or something. Just don't take it personally. If they do say that they don't have anything to offer, it's fine to ask them. If they don't have a position, that's fine. Just check in with them and say, like, is there a time that like you maybe have work available, or like, if you're underqualified or they don't have work for you, just ask them if they have anyone else to refer you to that you could work with. So kind of read the situation a bit. Don't send emails like every day pestering them for a job, but also it's fine to ask them for a reason if they rejected you, and they can always refer you to someone else.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks to all the panelists.
I think we can stop recording.